So one of the big stories over the weekend was Frank Sanchez knocking out, icing Richard Torres Jr. in 2 rounds to destroy the hopes of American heavyweight boxing once again. But more importantly for himself, it is the signature win of his career. This has been a guy that's been right there for a lot of big fights, and it just hasn't happened for him one way or the other. So he punches his ticket and he becomes the IBF mandatory challenger, world title shot pending. Now, in the immediate aftermath of this knockout, a lot of people on social media in the Twitter boxing community, they felt the need to tweet about all the fighters that they feel avoided Frank Sanchez or ducked Frank Sanchez. And one of those guys that tweeted, and shout out to him, he's a good friend of the program, and I love talking to him. He's got a great account and very insightful person about boxing, and that is my main man, 50 grand, Andrew Talkers. Shout out to him. Go follow him on Twitter, right? Great guy, great information. Always keeping everybody, helping to keep everybody up to date with what's going on in boxing. But my man Talkers, he was speaking on my main man, Filip Hrgovic, and he was saying, look, don't y'all forget, let it not be lost on you guys that Filip Hrgovic ducked Frank Sanchez, right? So he said that. This prompted a response from one of the most well-known managers in the sport of boxing and the manager of Filip Hrgovic, Keith Conley. And Keith Conley, he had to have a rebuttal to that, and he said, and I quote, we being Filip Hrgovic and him, we never turned down the Frank Sanchez fight. Now, I asked Keith Conley, in plain English, I said, okay, what happened? What happened with that fight? Because I've never seen nobody really say anything about it. I haven't really seen too much explanations as to why the fight did happen. It was ordered to happen at a particular point, and then Hrgovic fought David Adelaide, which wound up being a very fun fight, produced the round of the year. Frank Sanchez produced one of the biggest knockouts in heavyweight boxing over the last couple of years in this fight, so it produced some great things despite it not happening, but that was a fight that was on the table. And, I asked Keith, I said, look, there were purse bids that were supposed to happen by a certain date. What happened to the purse bid? Did nobody bid on the fight? Did Frank Sanchez go in another direction? And Keith Conley said pretty much, look, nobody was looking to fund that fight at that time. Hrgovic said yes, but sometimes you have to pivot if the powers that be don't want it, which that was my thought at the time, because I know Filip Hrgovic being a heavyweight from Croatia, not having a lot of international TV money behind him, a lot of times he's gotten the short end of the stick in other scenarios for not getting fights because of that. That was my thought back then, and then upon researching everything, that was my thought now, and he kind of just went ahead and confirmed that to me. And then, Keith's a fair guy. He's a fair guy. He wound up saying too also that he wasn't just saying that he wasn't being unfair to Frank Sanchez either. He said, look, Filip doesn't turn down fights, and Frank Sanchez also said yes to the fight. But the people that fund boxing, i.e. the Saudis, they wanted other fights, right? And right now we know in the heavyweight division and for much of the boxing right now, the Saudis are the breadwinners. They're the ones funding this. So if they don't want to fight, generally speaking, for better or for worse, for good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't happen. And that's ultimately what happened, because Frank Sanchez and Filip Hrgovic are not the biggest of names in the heavyweight division. And I don't think we need to, have a debate about that. So I say all that to say this, and I'll just put it out there for documentation purposes, because this is a True School Sports exclusive. If, for whatever reason, if Filip Hrgovic can't secure, if he can't secure either of the two big fights against the Brits, those two fights being the much talked about Moses Itama step-up fight for Moses, or the rematch world title shot against Daniel Dubois, or of course, Aji Kabiel in Germany, because that would be a mega event. There's a big Croatian population there. If Filip Hrgovic can't secure either one of those three fights, this is a fight that should be looked into, because really and truthfully, I think the fight is worth more now than it was when it was initially supposed to happen or when it was ordered, because, Frank Sanchez has gotten a highlight reel knockout against an undefeated young American heavyweight. Filip Hrgovic has had a round of the year with David Adelaide, and he's picked up a stoppage victory over Dave Allen in the British market. So both guys have raised their profile and enhanced their stock in the division. And, you know, like I said, if Hrgovic can't get those big fights against the three guys I just named, we could see a scenario where these guys actually need each other. Because the interesting thing about it is, once upon a time, about 4 or 5 years ago, Filip Hrgovic was the IBF mandatory challenger. So you would have a scenario where the current IBF mandatory challenger could fight the former IBF mandatory challenger. And when you go on, you just explore the rankings, right? Because the IBF has the number 1 and the number 2 spot vacant. So that means your number 3. But yeah, like I was saying, your number 3 is your de facto number 1 contender. That guy is Frank Sanchez. And then you go down the list. Frank Sanchez is 3. He just beat Richard Torres, who was 4. You got Mosley Tamba there at 5, but Mosley Tamba is ranked number 1 in the WBO and number 1 in the WBA. So presumably he's gonna go that route. There's no reason for him to fight someone like Frank Sanchez from a business standpoint. After him, you got Anthony Joshua, who we don't know what the hell is going on with him because he had that tragedy with his friends. May God rest their soul. He's fighting some guy soon. So we'll see if he even returns to championship level boxing. But even if he does, do you think Anthony Joshua really wants to fight Frank Sanchez, a guy that's not a big name who just scored a big knockout? I mean, that doesn't even make business sense for him. So you would be led to believe that more likely than not, if that fight's presented to him, he's not going to take it, right? And then after that, you have Bakio Dir Jalolov, who's probably been one of the most babied heavyweights in the division. He's fought some of the softest competition in this division because he's been too busy in Uzbekistan beating up on kids in the Olympics and things like that. So we'll see if he even wants to box because he makes more money just being an amateur than he does a professional. So who knows what's going on with him. But like if he doesn't take the fight, that brings you to Filip Hrgovic sitting there at number 8. So you could see a scenario, and I want to get it out there, you could see a scenario where they go down the IBF rankings and they get to Hrgovic again. And now you have that scenario presented again where Hrgovic could fight Frank Sanchez for what I believe will be, at some point in time in the near future, a vacant IBF title, because Usyk is 38, going on 39 years old. It's clear to see he doesn't have that hunger and that ambition that he once had, right? And even if he does, why would Usyk, who just made all this money fighting Rico Verhoeven, why would he fight Frank Sanchez or Filip Hrgovic right now when there's bigger fights out there for him in the division? You know what I mean? He's proven what he needs to prove. When you get to, a lot of fighters, when they get to this stage, they do what they want to do, and he's probably going to do what the hell he wants to do, and those plans more than likely will not include Frank Sanchez. So all I'm saying is this: you could get a scenario where Frank Sanchez versus Filip Hrgovic gets offered for the IBF heavyweight title, and you know that's an option for him. But of course, it's a long shot. I'm getting it out there just to get out the conversation that I had with Keith Connolly on Twitter about this. And respect to him, man, because he's the first boxing manager of that caliber, of that level, that's ever like had this interaction with me on social media where, you know, there's rumors out there and he's addressing it head on and he's being transparent in what he's saying. So respect to him. You know, my respect for him went up because of that. So shout out to Keith Connolly. And yeah, shout out to Filip Hrgovic, shout out to Frank Sanchez, 2 of the real warriors in the heavyweight division. We'll see what happens. You know, this could wind up being a title fight one day, but if it's not, I still think both Hrgovic and Sanchez are both going to have their part to play in the notable big fights in the heavyweight division in 2026 and beyond. So leave your comments down below. I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about all this? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.